Justice for All is the red-headed stepchild of the Ace Attorney trilogy. Failing that, it's the forgettable middle child. But why? What makes this game so unliked among the fanbase? It has one of the best cases in the series, but is that just not enough to carry it? Let's take a look at the entirety of Justice for All and discuss why some people think it's booty cheeks. Starting off with case 1, it's pretty easy to see why it falls flat. It's a tutorial case in every sense of the word. It's easy. Too easy even. The reason that the first turnabout works in the first game is because it's literally the first case in the series. Therefore, it needs a tutorial and the player doesn't really know what they're missing out on. Here, the player has likely just played either of these two. High stakes, acclaimed trials. Obviously yes, a player could go to the store, see Justice for All, and say, hey, this seems cool, I'll try it out, without having played the first game. But you can also make the same argument for Trials and Tribulations opener as well, and that game handles it a lot better. I don't need a tutorial. This easily could have been fixed by having Maggie ask Phoenix, are you sure you can cross-examine? Or something like that. Then, the only tutorial someone who played the first game would need is an explanation that you can now present profiles to witnesses, and nothing else. It's just not a fun case in my opinion. In my third ever Talking Ace Attorney video ever, I ranked it as the last of all the trilogy cases. Bad. The game picks itself back up in a way with case 2. This case takes place chronologically before the first one, and we get to see how Nick and Maya reunite after the events of Turnabout Goodbyes, which isn't explained in the first case. Of course, it doesn't last long as Maya is arrested for the murder of a man. The details of this case don't matter, it deserves its own video, but I'll talk about why I like this case so much. It really just comes down to the mystery. The case is a locked room mystery with a bit of a twist. Maya is locked in a channeling room with the victim, and only the victim as far as everyone is aware. There aren't any major leaps of logic when it comes to the established rules of the Ace Attorney universe. The final twist with the Miney sisters was good as well. It gives Mimi Miney a proper motive that the player can relate to a little bit. She murdered someone, but that doesn't mean you can't understand the reason why. Big Top is the most hated case among the fanbase. I don't even think it's all that great, but in a way I feel it's overhated. It's not my least favorite Ace Attorney case, for example. Turnabout Serenade is worse in my opinion. Now look, it's not great, and I think it's just slightly above Serenade because the logic in that case is somehow worse than this one. In Big Top, the way the murder is carried out kinda throws out the laws of physics. Basically, it relies on the victim being in the literal, perfect place to get hit by a heavy statue using an improvised pulley system. As far as Ace Attorney murder plot goes, it's kinda weak, and it kinda sucks. Acker had a really good motive too. One of the better ones in the series in my opinion, but the way they carried it out is just not as good as it could have been. Then there's the infamous pedophilic love triangle between 2 adult men and a 16-year-old girl. It's technically legal in the state that I live in, but it's still pretty disgusting. The music is straight up bad too. Some of the characters are also just straight up annoying. All in all, it's not the worst case, but I'm not itching to replay it. The final case is where this game shines. It was my number 2 case in the trilogy, and it's staying put in that spot even today. Matt on Guard is a fantastic one-case villain, and the way the game fakes you out at first is great. This is the most suffocating finale, as if you fail, Maya dies, but if you succeed, a guilty man walks free and an innocent person is put in prison. I've never felt more smothered playing a video game than I did here. You walk on a knife's edge the entire time. This is one of the most important cases in Phoenix Wright's character arc and the true highlight of this game. This game introduces 2 new main characters, so I'll go over them now. Pearl Fay is a better written character than people give her credit for. She's about what you'd expect from a little girl who grew up with a mother who has narcissistic tendencies. If it weren't for her growing up with Maya, she may have come out of that household differently. Her primary purpose for her being in the story is literally just channeling Mia, as Maya is MIA for 2 of the 4 cases, and she does the job just fine. Franziska von Karma is okay, but she's not even close to as good as either of the 2 prosecutors she's between in this series. I don't think I've seen anyone placing her above Edgeworth or Gatto. I don't think she's terrible per se, but the only reason she hasn't gotten a character analysis video is because her character isn't as clear as the others. It's there, but even then I still don't think it's as good as Edgeworth or Gatto's. And honestly, I think she relies way too much on character quirks to be entertaining. Sure, whip me because I'm a foolish fool for this take, but am I wrong? Edgeworth doesn't even have any quirks like that are immediately apparent, and outside of the coffee thing, Gatto would still be regarded as one of the best. Also, her quirks were straight up annoying in my opinion, and took away from what was otherwise a decent character. Edgeworth returns in this game after the events of Rise from the Ashes, and he seemingly committed suicide? Did literally anyone believe this at all? And the game tries these little hints whenever he's brought up, like Phoenix always goes emo, like, "Don't talk about him anymore, Maya." It's poorly done, to be honest. And other than this, there isn't really an overarching plot over the whole game. So why do people dislike this game? Frankly, I think that this lack of overarching plot over the game hurts it quite a bit. In Ace Attorney 1, we play through the redemption of Miles Edgeworth, and in Trials and Tribulations, we play the story of Godot and the growth of Phoenix Wright. In this game, the story isn't really apparent. It's more the game that kicks off Trials and Tribulations as opposed to the game with its own story. What is the story of this game? You could say that it's Phoenix finding out what justice and being a lawyer is to him, but that's actually just the story of the last case. The other three cases are pretty disjointed outside of the characters. The first and third do nothing for the little story that there is. And to be honest, the second case is a case that's great off of its own merit, or even the merit of the first Ace Attorney game. Not off the rest of Justice for All. In the previous game, the second case does a lot more than the second case here does. In it, your mentor dies, you're introduced to the most of the main cast, the investigation segments are introduced, and you learn how wacky Ace Attorney can really be with the introduction of spirit channeling. In this case, you're only introduced to a few new members of the cast in Psyche Locks. Now, this isn't a bad thing in a vacuum. The second case of Trials and Tribulations also has this issue, but it really goes to show how much lesser this story can be in comparison, when the second case of this game is considered bad, while the second case of Trials and Tribulations is considered meh, but Trials and Tribulations runs laps around this game according to the fanbase. Big Top isn't as bad as everyone says it is. It's bad, but don't get me wrong, I feel as though the online circle jerk over this case has become so strong that some people literally think it's Satan. It's not like the case is so bad it'll make the average player throw away the game. I've seen plenty of YouTubers play Justice for All, and none of them have even said that the case sucks. This is the brilliant thing about Ace Attorney in my opinion. Even the shittier cases are still enjoyable. And for the final crappy thing I talk about, it has to be the soundtrack. This game has the weakest soundtrack in the entire series. The Courtroom Suite is pretty underwhelming. The only song that I think is better than its predecessor is Confess the Truth 2002. Hotline of Fate is a great track as well, but it plays more sporadically. The trial theme isn't half bad either, but the first game's trial theme sounds like elevator music, so you can only go up from there. Like, not every track is terrible, there are some good songs in there, but it's mostly forgettable. I come back to this soundtrack the least. But, like I normally do, here are my favorite tracks from the game. So I've told you a lot about why this game isn't great, but what about the great things in this game? There are quite a few actually. Firstly, cases 2 and 4 are fantastic. I've mentioned this a few times already, but it's what Ace Attorney really boils down to. How good are the cases? Well, in this game, 2 of them are great. Phoenix Wright also has more of a character arc in this game, even though it primarily takes place over the final case. In the first game, he was a bit of a blank slate character. Even Shu Takumi admits this. He wrote Phoenix to echo the thoughts of the player, not to be his own character. While he still retains this in this game, he also starts to come into his own a little bit. Finally, the introduction of psych locks helped investigations feel less tedious and boring, though the trial sections are still far better in my opinion. Until the Great Ace Attorney's second chapter, I feel like the entire series has this issue though, so I won't harp on it too much. I know this seemed like a short, good section, but there isn't really much else that stands out about this game in my opinion. Its lows are super low, while its highs are high. It's very inconsistent. As much as you may think that I think this game sucks, I actually don't. It's crucial to the trilogy. In fact, I'd say that if there was one game that isn't crucial to the trilogy, it's the first one. This game sets up Bridge to the Turnabout, what many consider to be the best case in the series. It needs to exist. Well, the second and fourth cases do. This is another reason why people don't like this game as much. Both Case 1 and Case 3 don't really need to exist, which is something you can't really say about the other two trilogy games. Let's take a look at the other first and third cases of each trilogy game. So obviously I've gone over this. The first turnabout needs to exist. And I argue that this first case is almost the perfect intro to the series. The mystery is easy, but not so easy that it makes the player bored. It's short and it makes you feel like a boss for completing it. It's a tutorial, but it needs to be a tutorial, so I can't hate on it the same way I hate the Lost Turnabout. Turnabout Samurai is also crucial to set up Turnabout Goodbyes. Without it, Edgeworth would have never turned face, or become a good guy for people that aren't into wrestling. Also, as Edgeworth is a recurring character throughout the rest of the series, it's safe to say that without this character change, the whole series would be completely different. Coming to Turnabout Memories and Trials and Tribulations, it should be obvious why it's crucial to the series. It literally sets up the entire game. Without it, the player would be really confused for the rest of the game, so you can't really take it out. Plus, it's the best intro case of the first 3 games, and possibly even all 6 games. Although it does have competition from Apollo Justice, just about the only thing that game is competitive with Trials and Tribulations in. Now, Recipe for Turnabout is definitely the weakest case here in terms of importance. You could totally take it out of Trials and Tribulations and not much would change. The only important thing in it is how it sets up the final twist. Imagine if that whole thing came out of nowhere. Go back to what I described about these 4 cases and apply them to the first and third cases of Justice for All. These cases don't even need to be in this game. Nothing important happens in the grand scheme of things in these cases, which makes them incredibly forgettable except for Big Top, but people only talk about how much that case blows. That's about all I've got for you today. Please continue this discussion in the comments, and check out the pinned comment below to check out my Twitter, Discord, and Patreon. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you next time.